Introduction. After the phenomenal $2.4 billion initial public offering, IPO, of Just Eat, an online food ordering startup, Ash kept being asked about the quote-unquote secret to success in business. Ash was there at Just Eat from the start, and he was the one who headed up their growth. He was their first marketing director in London and took them all the way to their series, a funding of $17 million in their first TV ad campaign. To answer this question, his mind spun in different directions, trying to think of an accurate answer. Was it the idea? The technology? The quote-unquote growth hacks? The team? The timing? Maybe it was just the sheer hard work and hustle that they'd put in. What really led to one of the largest tech startup IPOs the United Kingdom had seen in almost a decade? Just Eat is touted as an extraordinary success story, and is now so big that they've even acquired Grubhub. However, every answer Ash gave about this cause of their success felt as if it were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, and he could never quite put his finger on it. The beginnings of a theory for startup success began to brew in the back of his mind as he moved on from Just Eat and started a few other companies. First founding his own fully bootstrapped, without external funding or investment, startup called Fair Exchange, a private hire taxi platform, then venturing abroad to start Wash Plus, an on-demand mobile laundry app, the first of its kind in Dubai. With Fair Exchange, Ash, his co-founder, and his team developed smart software and digital marketing systems that took taxi bookings before Uber entered the scene. Ash grew Fair Exchange at blinding speed, from 0 to 40 million in booking revenues in just 3 years, with only 5 full-time staff. Then his next startup, Wash Plus, became Dubai's fastest-growing laundry and dry cleaning startup. So he developed a reputation of being a quote-unquote growth hacker, someone who's good at growing a startup really, really fast. And he never stopped, with his latest ventures being U-Hubs, an upskilling platform that visualizes a team's need for business growth. Meanwhile, Hassan had built his strategy and marketing business from his bedroom at his parents' house, and had grown and automated it to the point where that he was making a significant passive income. While his friends were complaining about their day jobs and dreading their Monday mornings, he was having fun traveling and making enough money every month to start investing and looking for other projects to work on. It was during this time that we, Ash and Hassan, met each other. Both at a loose end, we decided to start investing in and advising technology startups together. We had a lot of compassion and an affinity for startup founders and really enjoyed helping them. We continued to travel and work with startups all around the world, from Europe to America, the Middle East to Southeast Asia, and we both pondered this unspoken secret to starting successful businesses. We noticed that founders and investors all over the world were running into the same issues and asking us the same questions. Everyone we met was working really hard, but some startups were succeeding while others were failing. The myth of meritocracy. If we have learned anything on our entrepreneurial journeys, it is that the media narrative on startup success can be very misleading. Around every corner, you're bombarded with endless myths, hero worship, PR, and hype about successful entrepreneurs who are heralded as living testaments to the power of hard work, meritocracy, and the American dream. Silicon Valley in the startup world loves to present itself as a progressive, meritocratic place. Those talented and hardworking enough inevitably rising up above the parapet and reaping the rewards for all the blood, sweat, and tears they have put in. But you know what? For all its progress and supposed flat hierarchies, it still suffers from the same problem as other industries. Meritocracy means those who merit. It are the ones who achieve it. In other words, those who deserve to get rich get rich. At the core of these narratives, you'll find a fallacy. We can all become billionaire entrepreneurs on the cover of Forbes if we only pulled up our socks, if only we wanted it bad enough, if only we got up at 4 a.m. and hustled hard enough. We read articles and watched news segments about these superstar startup founders, and we read books that tell us we can all be like them if we simply get our shit together. Bullshit. At a time when inequality was at an all-time high, and as two guys who have quote-unquote made it and can now be considered very privileged, we want to relive the world of the delusion that we're living in an actual pure meritocracy. Because over 2 decades in the startup game, we have begun to see distinct patterns emerge as to which startups succeed and which ones fail. And we're ready to answer the question, how did a startup become so successful? In this book, we want to break down the factors of success in a way that is both eye-opening and brutally honest, but still ultimately very empowering. Yes, over the last 100 years, we have made leaps and bounds in becoming more meritocratic and fair. And that's fantastic. America definitely is a land of opportunity. However, our experience in the startup scene tells us that we still have a long way to go. The reality is that there are still problems, barriers, and unlevel playing fields too numerous to count. As insiders who's been on all sides of the table, from poor to privileged, from employees to entrepreneurs, startup founders to angel investors, and mentees to mentors, we're more convinced than ever of the fact that the path to success is not just self-discipline, belief, and hard work. We see it every day. Plenty of hardworking, dedicated, passionate startup founders come to pitch us at our central London office. Unfortunately, like all investors, we have to say no far more than we can say yes. Why? Often it's because they don't understand a simple truth. A truth that defies almost every book title or business headline you see today. Success in the startup world is not awarded to the hardest workers. It is awarded to those who develop and use their unfair advantages. By unfair advantages, we do not mean an unethical or illegal advantage, although there are many of those. An unfair advantage is a competitive upper hand, and your set of unfair advantages is unique to you. It's more than a unique selling point. It's a fundamental leg up over the competition. In others, it's one that is not earned or worked for. Let's take a very simple example from sports. Being tall is a plain and significant unfair advantage in basketball. It doesn't matter how hard a short basketball player works, they have less of a chance of becoming a professional. That doesn't mean, of course, that there has never been a short professional basketball player. It just means they're much less likely regardless of the amount of effort they put in. Startup businesses are not physical sports, but similar rules still apply. If you're privileged, educated, richer, smarter, you're more likely to win. But luckily, that's not the full story, because unfair advantages can be found in a lot of unexpected ways. Virtually everyone we speak to agree with this radical new way of looking at success in life and in business, whether or not they'd be considered conventionally successful or not. This book is unique in that primary focus is not the idea, the product, or anything else in the business. This book is about you, the founder, the entrepreneur behind the business, whether you've already launched your startup or are still thinking about it. The reason for this is that it all starts with you. A startup at the early stages has nothing to show, and it's the founder or co-founder who sets it up for success. The business idea is important, and we will talk about it. But before the idea comes, you. Here's what influential venture capitalist Eileen Burbidge, founding partner and investor at Passion Capital, had to say. When we first meet a company or business seeking investment, we're simply judging the people. Ideally, we want to assess the team, its tech, and any momentum the company has. But since we invest so early, we almost never find all three. Often the only thing we have to gauge is the team, the founders. Likewise, that's what we look at before investing in a company, and what any investor worth their salt will look at too. The goal of traction. Now we mention investors and venture capitalists, VCs. Not because every founder should be looking to raise money from them. Far from it. Some businesses are better. And venture capitalists, VCs. Not because every founder should be looking to raise money from them. Far from it. Some businesses are better bootstrapped without investors and kept lean, keeping costs and overheads low. But preparing to pitch your startup, putting together a pitch deck, and figuring out how to concisely sell your idea and why you're the person or team to do it is an incredibly useful way to make you think about your unfair advantages, the things that sell you, and how you should highlight them. In reality, it's very rare to raise funds without having any sales, or at least users. This traction, more and more people using your product, shows that you're actually making progress with your startup, that you're actually making something people love, rather than just spinning your wheels, getting nowhere. Whether or not you intend to get investments into your startup, a big question to address is this: how do you attain that elusive traction in the first place? After all, most startups fail not because they can't build a product, but because they can't get enough customers or users. We're often invited to talk about startup and growing a startup. We always like to start with this slide. Most startups fail, not because they can't build a product, but because they can't get traction. To get that momentum, growth, and subsequent success in your startup, you need to have a strong unfair advantage at your foundation. By knowing, developing, and leveraging your unfair advantages, you will work on the right idea, partner with the right co-founders, and start from a place of strength. Starting a company from scratch and then growing it is one of the hardest things you can do. But with the right unfair advantages and the right mindset, you can be in with a shot. The book. When we started speaking about the unfair advantages concept on stage, it resonated in a way we weren't expecting. At the end of each talk, we'd have a long line of attendees, founders, aspiring founders, investors, all lining up to ask us to help them find their unfair advantages. And guess what? They were often the people who thought of themselves as the underdogs, just like us. That's why we decided to write this book. Here were our first impressions of each other. Hassan. We met each other at a business dinner in London. Despite his success and experience, I found Ash to be extremely down to earth. I marveled at his ability to make everyone he met feel at ease in his presence. He was the kind of unpretentious man who had the self-assuredness to continually ask questions about something if he didn't fully get it. His intellectual curiosity was always apparent, and he always found a way to throw in some humor no matter the situation. Ash. Hassan came across as an astute and humble young entrepreneur who was generating a good passive income for himself with his boutique digital marketing agency. While I had a more intuitive inclination to entrepreneurship from a young age, Hassan's journey began with him investing in an online course. He explained how he got it from freedom and independence, and he got it straight away. When I began to explain my Just Eat journey in my early theory of unfair advantages, we became friends and we soon started investing together. Sitting through hundreds of startup pitches in which founders were trying to get investments. The insights we were able to glean together developed into our investment thesis and formed part of a tech startup we began working on. Subsequently, we've worked together to develop this concept and put together this book. We have since advised, mentored, and consulted with hundreds of founders at the early stages of their startups. We've even presented the unfair advantage model in TEDx talks and at top businesses schools around the world. We've spoke to corporations looking to maintain their dominance, launch new products, or enter new markets by applying startup and unfair advantage methodologies. Now we wanted to share what we know with you. We want to help you find your own unfair advantage to succeed in your startup, whether you've already have one or are planning to start one. By reading this book, you'll walk away with 1. A strong understanding of how success works and where it comes from. 2. The mental models and framework that allow you to uncover your own unfair advantage to succeed in business. 3. The Startup Quick Start Guide, the how-to manual that will teach you how to leverage your unfair advantages to get your business started with a really solid foundation. In the world of business, the odds are stacked against you. Startups have a habit of failing, sometimes quite spectacularly. You don't want to be part of the 90% who don't make it. Stack the deck in your favor to succeed. This book is your roadmap to putting those odds in your favor, to succeed in starting that startup, to raise the funding, to get that traction, and hopefully get that big exit if that's what you're after. We both wish we could have a book like this at the beginning of our entrepreneurial journeys. It will help you no matter the challenges you may be facing, whether you need to find a co-founder, get your first customer, juggle a full-time job while getting your startup off the ground, create a second income stream, get funding, build an MVP, minimum viable product. We'll explain it in part 3. Get users, develop your sales, marketing, and growth hacking. Generate enough cash to extend your runway time, to keep your startup afloat, handle competitors, attract mentors and advisors, and more. This book is our official answer to the question we get asked about the success we've been fortunate enough to have in business. We truly believe that you'll find life-changing value in this book and a radical and brutally honest, yet still inspirational way of looking at the world of business success. If you're thinking of starting your entrepreneurial journey, this book is for you. We've just gone through a crazy time in human history with the pandemic. Jobs aren't what they used to be. Everybody's now thinking about multiple revenue streams. The ability to change your whole career or to become a full-time entrepreneur. We can relate so strongly to aspiring founders and that feelings of freedom you crave, as well as the fear you feel. The perfectionism, the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, the self-sabotage, and everything else that seems to be holding you back. And if you're already running a startup but are struggling with some of those early stage challenges, this book is also for you. It is your first step to the fast track with the information you'll gain from the Understand section, Part 1, and the practical steps and miles framework in the Audit section, Part 2. You will look at success in your own personal and circumstantial strengths and weaknesses like you've never before. Equipped with those advantages, you'll be confident and ready for Part 3, the Startup Quick Start Guide. You'll be ready to take the startup world by storm and make those dreams a reality. Let's dive in. Ash, Ali, and Hassan Kuba.